Hey Bandidos, Tux here. Yeah, I'm on fire again. And that's because today I bring you the ultimate Season 2 build. It combines the best of Season 2 gear to incinerate rooms into a fine, powdery ash. Today I bring it to you. I'm going to show you how to make it and use it. Let's go. So the reason why I'm calling this the ultimate build for Season 2, Year 5, 2023 is because it brings it all together. So every time the devs deliver a new season, there's usually an underlying theme. So last season, for example, we got the St. Elmo and the Shocker Punch. So it was electricity or shock. And this season, it turns out to be fire. So if you look at a lot of the elements, there's a fire element related to it. We have the new exotic Iron Lung that catches enemies on fire, the Exuro gear set that is focused on the incinerator turret that also catches enemies on fire, and we got the new exotic chest piece called the Collector that's technically about grenades. However, I think in my opinion it works best with the incendiary grenade, so catches enemies on fire. Anyways, each one of these elements has a weakness, but when you put them all together, those individual weaknesses are shadowed by great synergy. And this is a very unique and effective build. In the CC crowd control, team support, and skill damage area, you're providing it all, including buffing your team for more damage output from them, as well as actually putting out amazing damage yourself. And then of course, you're controlling the crowd. So it is the trifecta of a build. And one I really do recommend you have in your loadouts. Very handy for legendary, but is it good for solo? Not really. If you were gonna run the solo, I'd probably make a few changes, but the fire turret solo is just really not that good. It's okay. So I've created build and review videos for each one of these new elements provided in Season 2. So I'm not gonna dig down into the strengths and weaknesses of each. Okay, so I'll just leave that up to you to watch these videos if you're interested in learning more about them. Starting with the broad strokes, let's look at the gear set. So this is the Ortiz Exuro, the brand new gear set. It gives us increased burn duration, skill health, and then burn damage. And then it buffs your turret, so it gives you 360 degrees on the incinerator turret, and then you're immune to fire, which is really helpful. It explodes when you turn it off. And then you want skill tiers and you want status effects everywhere. So status effects is going to give you longer burn damage and just overall more damage output from that skill. And then we got skill haste because it does kind of have a lengthy cooldown. So we have on the gloves another skill tier and more status effects, and then the knees skill tier and status effects, the holster more status effects.
Hey Bandidos, the community we have built together wouldn't have been possible without you. So as a thank you for supporting my channel, I am bringing you the hookup on member perks, including even more Division 2 content and the celebrated gaming music playlists. If you're not part of Tux's Players Club, now is your chance.
Looking at the incinerator turret, so as you can see, it's got a 45-second cooldown and a 32-second duration. The reality is that these stats aren't exactly accurate on how they're portrayed, especially the duration. So the duration is much longer than that. Really, it's minutes because you're in control of the duration. The duration is actually measuring its active time. So that active time is not when you throw it out. That active time is when you have it actually blowing out fire. So you can turn this on and off using your skill active button. When it is turned off, there is still a duration meter on it, but it's much, much slower. But the cooldown on this thing is really annoying, but we got answers for that, and that's what we're curing with this build. Don't worry about the cooldown. All right, and for the other skill, I'm running the shock trap. That's because this bad boy has a lot of tools on its utility belt, and so you really don't want to be bogged down by having to shoot chems. I found it was way too tedious. The shock is just another way to hold the enemy still, and it's hands-free. And because we're 5 skill tiers, it casts a very wide net. So I'm running survival. Let's just jump into that. So survivalist is really cool. So it gives you 10% protection from elites, a little bit helpful, but it also gives your team 10% more damage to status affected target. And that's your job, is to keep these bad boys under some sort of status effect. So that's more damage for your team, and you get access to the incendiary grenades. So these grenades actually get buffed by the gear set, because the gear set doesn't say anything about skill burn or skill burn duration. It's just general burn damage and general burn duration. Of course, we're running the collector's chest piece. It comes with crits and a red core, so it is what it is. But we're gonna get an extra 3 grenade capacity, grenade radius, grenade damage, and then more grenade damage for every extra enemy caught in the blast. And then it's gonna regenerate grenades all the way through. So on its own, we found the collector chest piece was sort of all right, but in legendary missions, we were finding that we were running out of grenades about halfway through, and we were down to that 2 grenade minimum that this thing gives you. But with this build, that's less of an issue because you have so many tools on your utility belt that this is just one of them. And so you're not tossing out as many grenades, or you're not as reliant on your grenades. You're not centered on your grenades. So even if you do get down to just your 2 grenades and you're just regenerating the same 2 grenades, you're okay with that because you got fire and you got shock and then you got more fire. So you're doing all right. And that's why this is a good setup, because each piece has the other pieces back. So looking at the backpack, the setup here, this is giving us perfect opportunistic, which is 15% amplified damage to all sources. It's got skill damage and skill haste. It's got repair skills. I wish that was either status effects or skill haste. If you don't have this backpack or anything like it, you can just go ahead and run an electric version. This should be a lot easier to farm. You're not going to have the perfect opportunistic, but that's okay. A Brazos also works because skill haste is super handy. A Hana U and or a Murakami for more duration. So you have a lot of options on your backpack. So that's more damage. So you're getting 10% more damage to status affected targets for your team, and you're giving them 15% more amp damage as well. But we're not done, because that amplified damage is also buffing your turret, and it's also buffing your grenades and your primary weapon. So everything you have is being impacted by that opportunistic. The fire, everything. So it's not just for your team. Speaking of giving your team more damage, the primary weapon is actually the lefty here. And so I just got some reload speed and some mods here that help it handle a little bit better. But this gives your team more damage. So your whole team gets more damage from that. And that's tied to the grenade, which is tied to the collector chest. So it's definitely a combo. And then you put opportunistic because that's a shotgun. So you're getting the perfect sledgehammer buff and the opportunistic buff at the same time. And of course, because those are fire grenades, you're getting the 10%. So that's 65% in total damage buffs just from that little combo to your team and to all sources. To all sources, really. So the grenade, your turret, your primary weapon, they're all taking that damage buff. As a backup, you have the Iron Lung. And so where I use the Iron Lung is really those enemies at range, because it handles really well. The one thing that we noticed in gameplay is its reload is horrible, right? 5-second reload. On the status effect build, it's not that big of a deal because it's not your primary weapon. I started with it as my primary weapon and it was kind of annoying. So the shotgun is definitely what you want to have in hand, especially because you're throwing out those grenades. But when you have enemies at range, this is your best friend. And that's because it's gonna catch them on fire and then they're gonna pop out of cover. So it's really good at getting enemies out of cover. And its reload speed isn't that big of a deal on DPS builds because you can compensate with weapon handling or something to help it reload faster. But on a CC build, you don't wanna waste slots improving your reload speed on that LMG. Better off just putting it as a secondary weapon and another tool on that utility belt. So the only thing this build doesn't have, and if it did, it would be ultimately perfect, would be some sort of like armor regen or armor on kill or some repair skills or something like that. So we don't have that. If that becomes an issue for you, remember you got 5 skill tiers. So there's a lot of flexibility to swap out that secondary skill. So you're gonna definitely want to maintain that fire turret. It'd be pointless not to run that. But with your 5 skill tiers, you could run a fixer if you just want a strong little fixer. You could also run a hive. You could run a restorer hive or a reviver hive if you want to use it to pick up your allies as well. And so that could be helpful. You could also run the healer chem and just put out a really strong cloud of heals and then sit in it for a while because you're kind of playing it from a single place. And then you also get access to the Mender Seeker, which is a good little ally healer. So it roams around and heals who needs it, including yourself. So that's probably the best one to go with because it's hands-free. And so it's just gonna go around and squirt its green juice on people. So, it's hands-free and that's what you want because you're pretty busy here. You're hawking grenades and throwing traps and you're using your shotgun a lot so that you can maintain that opportunistic, and then you got your fire turret. But don't forget to turn your fire turret on and off, on and off, on and off. So keep an eye on who's in its range or who's not on fire, and then turn it on, then they're on fire, then turn it off, because you don't want to sit there and burn a guy that's already burning. They do still take damage, okay? They're taking impact damage from the fire, which is technically a skill damage, but they're not taking burn damage anymore. They're not taking new burn damage, and you can't refresh it until they're not on fire anymore. That's why you want to control this turret. You don't just want to throw it out there and waste it. Unless it's a room with a single wave, then okay, just throw it out there and let it go, 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 go. But if there's multiple waves, then you want to turn it on and off and use it accordingly, because again, you can't catch somebody on fire that's already on fire. So that's the build. I feel like this is a great one for season 2. It's the pinnacle. It brings it all together, and to be a really powerful build and really good for legendary team play, I definitely recommend running this one. So let me know what you think. Let me know if you're going to try this build or what you would do differently. Love to hear you guys' ideas. That's a wrap.
Follow me.